And I can close out of the tab. So I'll do that now.
Mhm.
Okay. It says we are live.
All right, very good. Well, hello everyone. I am so excited about this next session. Once again, my name is Bernice Jenkins. I am the Southern Region Financial Literacy Director for the National Association of Black Accountants, which we call NABA. And if you've been following us, if you've been aware, last fall we kicked off our financial literacy campaign. We had several great sessions. During that campaign. If you get a chance, go back through our YouTube channel. Definitely check that out. This semester, we are partnering with, and I'm very excited to introduce you guys to Maquiba Massey. Maquiba has started a financial literacy organization called FIQ, and she's created some very wonderful financial literacy flashcards to aid in the discussion regarding finances and understanding finances, since it tends to be somewhat of a taboo for many of us in underserved communities. So, we're going to take the time to go through her flashcard game today, and we'll also do the same thing on in April. And so, I also have with me four dynamic women. I'm so excited. I'll allow them to introduce themselves, but Maquiba has introduced us to two wonderful young women. They are recent college graduates. Actually, one is in graduate school now, but I'll let them tell you a little bit more about themselves. And also, we brought back Sharonda Everson. Sharonda did two wonderful sessions with us from the standpoint of mortgage lending and how to prepare your finances from a mortgage lending standpoint. She spends a great deal of her time with her customers and helping them understand financial literacy and also their decisions as it relates to home buying. So we're so happy to have her back. First, we'll go through a round of introductions. I will start off with Maquiba, let her introduce herself, tell you guys more about her company. We'll have our other panelists to introduce themselves. And then afterwards, we're going to let Maquiba kick us off with her FIQ card game.
Thank you so much, Bernice. As Bernice mentioned, I am Maquiba Massey, founder and CEO of Financial IQ. And the goal of the company is to really help normalize discussions of finances so that we can all grow comfortable and confident in discussing such confidential topics. That way, we can ensure that we understand the psychological factors that are influencing our thoughts and behavior about money. I am also a doctoral student at Jackson State University, where I actively research financial inclusion. And I'll kick it off to whoever next.
I can go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Nia Hill. I am a recent graduate of Howard University, where I studied accounting and sociology, and I am currently pursuing a Master of Science in Nonprofit Management at Columbia University in New York City. After graduating from Columbia this August, I'll be going into consulting, management consulting at Deloitte in Arlington, Virginia. And alongside Angel, we are co-authoring a book called Graduate to Freedom, which details our experience and our journeys to graduating from college debt-free. And we'll be discussing in that book how we did it graduating from an HBCU. I went to Howard, and Angel went to a PWI, but we'll also be discussing two different paths. So I graduated from Howard University debt free using just scholarships. And so upon getting accepted into Howard, I really didn't have a desire to go until I got that acceptance letter, but that financial aid package was not looking good. And so I reached out to their financial aid office multiple times asking for more money because the financial aid package was really just loans and I didn't want to graduate with any debt. And so they said no all three times that I asked them. But after reaching out to another person in a different department, after telling them, where I'm from the west side of Chicago, growing up in the inner city, going through certain experiences, I just really, going to Howard, I felt like could really help me achieve so much and break so many glass ceilings. And so after talking with her and going over my story, they were able to award me tuition and fees, but there were still other expenses that I had to cover. And so all 4 years at Howard, I applied for scholarships, renewable and non-renewable, and ultimately I was able to graduate with no debt. And so I'll be discussing my story more in that book, but that's one way that I've been, just using my experience to help bridge the gap in underserved communities.
Hi, you guys. I am Sharonda Everson. I am a home mortgage consultant. I graduated from Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama in 2003, which is an HBCU. And ever since then, I have been in the home lending industry in some capacity. I had to obtain a certification with the Department of Banking and Financing in order to lend, help, or be a consultant to lend people money for home mortgages. And since that time, I have learned so much, not only personally, but also professionally. And it has helped me hone in on different financial and mental impacts of home ownership and just overall finances in general. So that's allowed me to be able to tap into how I engage with my customers to get them prepared. And I've seen all types of scenarios, the good, the bad, the ugly, when the recession is in and when it's not in. And working with so many different cultures, you get a chance to see what certain people are doing with money and what certain people are not doing with money. So I am so thankful to be here, and I look forward to the upcoming questions.
So awesome. I'm just humbled to be on a panel with all of you wonderful women. Hi, everybody. My name is Angel Stallings. I am a native of Detroit, Michigan. As mentioned by Nia, I did attend a PWI. I went to Central Michigan University and obtained my degree in accounting with a minor in information systems. I took that non-traditional route to debt freedom, and that I did end up taking out loans, but by the grace of God, we were able to pay them back and just have excess money actually to again get those loans paid off and continue the rest of my journey debt free. And so we look forward to sharing that in our book coming this spring. Outside of the book, I'm also a business owner of Juice and Justice Apparel, which I should have been repping today, but there's a grace for that. I'm a new associate at PricewaterhouseCoopers in their Detroit office. I work in their tax practice, and I'm also a CPA candidate right now, looking forward to finishing up my last exam this Saturday. So really excited to be here, and definitely again share any knowledge that I have on this journey, but really looking forward to hearing from you all as well.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. As you all can see, this panel was certainly handpicked. We all serve as experts in our own respective areas. And I'm really just happy to have this discussion with you all. And so just to let you all know, I told Bernice this before everybody kind of joined, but there was a couple of topics that were spinning around in my head as to what we could discuss, even though we had the discussion Tuesday. But in short, God is leading me to discuss more so on the topic of women and money, especially being that this month is Women's History Month. And honestly, over the past couple of days, I have been reading various articles as it relates to different financial topics and how women are a part of different movements and the things that we are fortunate to have and some things that we are unfortunate in regards to policies and procedures and practices that are going on. And so most of the discussion will be around that. We'll try to implement topics as it relates to income, expenses, as well as debt. But just for starters, and if I can get everyone to maybe answer the first couple of questions, and then we'll kind of break it off into you all's respective areas. But just for starters, as a child growing up, as a little girl, what's like just one money memory that you all have, if there's any, and how has that influenced you all's thoughts and behavior around money? And so just to give you all an example, I remember growing up, my dad, bless his heart, love him to death, but he's cheap. And so, long story short, I remember always asking for things, and I wouldn't get a yes and I wouldn't get a no. And then I would ask again, wouldn't get a yes and wouldn't get a no. But one thing that I vividly remember was him telling me that if there is anything that I ever want, I needed to find a way to get it and use every resource or whatever it was that was out there in order to get it. And if I could not get it from exhausting my resources, then I would be able to ask him and he would get it for me without any question. Today, I realized that he played me as a child. And I say, well, he taught me a valuable lesson, but I realized that one, he would not have to buy whatever it is that I wanted, so he wouldn't be coming out of pocket. But two, it would really determine whether or not if I really wanted it, like, was it really worth me working that hard for? And if it was something that I really wanted, then I knew the proper channels and the resources to utilize in order to get it. And so with that lesson that he probably did not intentionally teach me, I have literally used that throughout my entire life in every aspect. And so if you all can just think about one money memory that you have as a child growing up, and more specifically as a girl growing up, how has that influenced it? How has that influenced your thoughts and behavior about money? And so we can start any order. Y'all can popcorn it.
I'll go ahead and start first. Or Sharonda, were you wanting to get started?
You can go ahead.
Okay. I have a lot of money memories, honestly. If I could pick one, it'll probably be this black and white, large workbook that my mom had with big black letters that had budget on it. And she would run photocopies off of it every month. Um, and every month, all of the bills were on that sheet and she was checking them off. And she would call the whole process robbing Peter to pay Paul, but she's like, let's see who we're gonna pay. So I mean, at the end of the day, I did learn that I needed to budget and that I needed to make sure that I'm budgeting enough so that all the bills are getting paid. So that's one money memory as a woman. And growing up, my mom paid all of the bills in the household, even though I did grow up in a two-parent household, so she handled it all. Of course, that has shaped me in such a way that if I'm not married, but if I ever got married, I'm not taking my hands off of it. It is ingrained in me. So that's mine.
Okay, so my money memory is not so great, but I recall my mom, she was a housewife, a traditional wife, and our father worked. And I remember there was a point in time when my mom gave me a note and she told me to go to the neighbor's house. And I read the note, and the note said to her friend Linda, can I please borrow $10 until next week? And a loaf of bread. And that bothered me, now that I think about it, well, not now, but I've always held on to that because, it really just touched on, even though you have a provider in the home financially, if one person is working, the woman of the house should always be financially aware of where her family stands, no matter what. And if there is not enough money, there should not be walking around on eggshells to ask for it, nor sending the children to the neighbor's house to borrow. So that stuck out with me, and I promised myself that I would never, ever want my children, whether I'm married or not, and I am married, but I would never want my children to have to experience that. And I also think about how my mother probably felt that she had to send me to her friend's home to ask for that she could not face her friend herself. So that's kind of like sad, but that's a money memory that I have.
That's a great one, Sharonda.
So I can go next. I agree that was a great and real example. Thank you for sharing that. But so I grew up in a single parent household. My mother raised myself and my two older siblings. And, as with Bernice, my mom paid all the bills. Like, she had no choice. There was no other assistance. And with my family, we grew up on government assistance. So I feel like that alone is like a money memory. But I remember, as a child, I was just always asking for stuff. Like, I always had a list of things I wanted, like I went to school, people had toys and stuff like that. But one thing that I really did love to do as a child was eat. Like, I loved McDonald's, and I just always had to go there. But, it's like every other time I would ask my mom, she would say the very well-known phrase of, "We have food at home." And so I think that's one memory that stands out to me because, every other time she would say yes, but there were many times where she had to say no because eating out could be really expensive. But I remember one time at McDonald's, she said yes one time, and I remember I was just asking for a lot of stuff. I wanted a whole meal. She was trying to give me stuff like off the dollar menu and stuff like that. And she was like, "We only have $5 for you to spend." And as a child, I was very nosy. And so, I went through her purse because I'm like, I don't believe you only have $5. And so I went through her purse and I found like a wad of like $20 bills. And I'm like, "You have $20 bills right here." And so she was like, "That's bill money." And I'm like, I don't believe that either. But, as a child, I didn't know that. But I think just like my experience just growing up in a single parent household, watching my mom, having to apply for food stamps for Section 8, and then still have to balance the little cash that she had for bills and stuff like that. Like, I didn't understand it at the time, but just looking back on it, I realized that, money in my household, it was like very scarce. And my mom, just had to budget it very wisely and carefully so that we could, survive. And so I think that's my money memory.
So do you go out to eat a lot now? Like, how has that influenced you?
I don't understand why I do, because I'm like, my mom, like, clearly she instilled in me at a young age, don't eat out a lot, but I still eat out a lot. So, but I think, once I grow older and have more bills and stuff like that, I think reality will hit me well, but yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
I can resonate with just so many of those stories. But yeah, definitely grew up again with in a single parent household as well. My mother just handled everything, okay, and just raising me and my siblings, my two older brothers. So, but I will honestly say my childhood memory that really came to mind as soon as you said it was just saving my first car. So I don't know if that still would qualify as childhood, but those teenage years, maybe preteen years, and realizing that, normally I can come and ask for things. And it's little purchases, yes, I could, expect, but buying a car was a big thing. And so I realized very quickly if I wanted it, I would have had, I need to work for it. And so at a young age, I've been working since I was younger, honestly. Like fifth grade, I had a little job, getting $25, checks here and there. But by my junior year in high school, I really had to buckle down because I said, I want this car. There was a school work program that I wanted to participate in, and I needed to have a car and license to do so. So when I realized, hey, my family doesn't have any money to just give to me to get this car, I realized, let me pick up a second job. So I was working at a dance studio, but then I also got a job waitressing. and every penny that I earned was going towards, this car. And I think that mindset that got instilled in me was, one, if it's worth it to me, I'll put in the work for it. And two, I'll sacrifice for it. So in that time, that bank account is steadily growing. My savings is growing, but I wasn't even tempted to touch it because I knew what my end goal was, which was to purchase this car so I could participate in this program. And so there got a point where, me, I get it from my mom. I do like to get my nails done regularly, things like that. But there came a point where she would be like, you know what, you haven't scheduled an appointment in a while. Do you want me to set one up for you? And I said, no, girl, I'm saving for this car. Like every little expense was getting cut out because my end goal was that car. And so eventually I was able to save up like 6,000 for it and pay for it cash, and that was it. Like then I realized, okay, now I get to see the fruit of my labor, and this car is mine. Nobody else can take it back from me. Like it's all me. And I still got that car. It has been very faithful to me, through college and getting me back and forth to school, my little Honda Accord. And so it really just showed me the value of hard work and it paying off. Especially like the fruit when you've done it yourself by God's grace, of course. I think it feels that much sweeter. Like, yeah, I know it's nice, if your parents can just, hand out that money, but that was not my story. And I think I appreciate my car even more so now. Like, I'm not even looking to upgrade it because I'm like, I worked hard for this car. Like, let me get the full use out of it before I need to go get another one. So I guess that's one of my childhood memories with finances.
Thank you for that. Oh, sorry. My phone. But anyways, so the next question that I have is relating to Sharonda's point that she mentioned, not being able to have honest conversations, right? Her mom wasn't in a comfortable situation to really ask certain questions or do certain things. And so with that, what are some of the things that have made you all uncomfortable, or what are some of the scenarios that you have been in, or some of the things that you have experienced where you weren't necessarily comfortable with discussing different financial topics, whether it be how much money you are making or asking people for money? Like, what does that look like? Are you comfortable with discussing finances, and to what extent? So any variation of answering that question would be great. And Sharonda, since you kind of kicked off that thought in my head, I would love to get your opinion first.
Okay, I will say this now, especially being in the mortgage industry, the financial services industry, I'm all for it. I'll speak about it, even the hard stuff. And especially knowing in our community that finances, that topic is so sensitive.
Yeah.
It is very, very sensitive. Previously, I used to have a hard time letting people know that I need help. It's one of those things where if I asked you for help financially, that means I really, really need it. And that brought up issues of pride. It brought up issues of not wanting people to judge me based on my financial situation. So I would keep secrets. I would suffer in silence. And I know a lot of people, can experience or have experienced the same thing. So that is something right there. It causes you to behave in a certain way that requires it's actually, it's a form of trauma that you have to deal with in regards to finances. You deal with your financial trauma so that when you have other relationships or when you're taking care of other business deals, you can be transparent or more transparent than you have been. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. And that's me to a nutshell. Like how you describe
Yeah.
yourself, that's certainly me. So I definitely feel you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Angel, you wanna chime in?
Yeah, I guess my relationship with it is a little complicated, because I'm definitely not one to ask for like financial help, because I've had instances in the past where I did. It was like, I would say it was my father. I was like, hey, can I borrow some money real quick so I can go on a trip? And I was really young, like wasn't at the age to work or anything. And I always get told, the only thing that they can tell you is no. Like if you ask and they don't, like the only option is that they could possibly say no. So I'm like, okay, I'll ask. And I got that no. Of course, not really fully knowing his financial situation, but I was like, I think that kind of maybe planted a seed of, if he ain't got to give it to me, then, why would I ask, other people, especially non-family, for money. So I think one time in high school, I had it was a rough time. Like I was in a car accident, so my car was in the shop. I had, AP exams coming and those cost money. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, if I keep my mindset of not asking for help, like it's gonna be all bad. So I ended up asking my high school principal, I believe, like, hey, this is what's going on with me. I really want to take these AP exams, but my car is in the shop, like literally just had a whole, accident. And so now my funds can't go to pay for these exams. And so in that instance, like literally the principal looked out for me so quickly and was willing to go above and beyond actually and said, hey, yes, your AP exams will get covered. If you need help, with your car, we have an auto, class. Maybe they can work on like just was going above and beyond what I thought possible for another human being to do for me. So now I can see the value in asking for help. Still, I think maybe again it's a pride ego thing of I've seen like my mom around me make it happen. So I'm really not trying to reach out for handouts. I'd rather just get it done on my own. Again, by God's grace. So I think I'm trying to find that balance, but for the most part, I will say I would rather get it by any other means before asking somebody else. Like it's just, ooh, child, because then you might want to know more about my financial business. So, yeah, that's me.
Yes, I would love to add on to this. So, as you all heard earlier, I don't mind asking for help if it's going to help me go to the next step. Like with Howard, I asked him a few times. I'm like, can I have more money? And they say no each time. But like, for instances like those, like especially with the university, like I know they have it. So I definitely don't shy back or shy away from asking, institutions or anything like that from financial assistance. But I think like being a Black woman in general, like there's a stigma around like she don't ask for help, like she got her own, she can do it by herself, even like with the media, like how they portray Black women, it's kind of like they put us in a position where it's like if she asks you for help then she's weak or something like that. And I don't think that's the case. Like even strong people, those who usually got it by themselves, will always need help. And so I think just like having that kind of mindset, it makes it easier for me to ask for help, especially growing up. I was just always like encouraged, like if you need help, ask. And so that being said, I'm very, very comfortable with discussing my finances. Now I won't get into specifics, like, don't ask me about my salary. But when it comes to like, financial advice, like investing, 401k, stuff like that, especially with those kind of situations, I would definitely ask you for assistance with that. But when it comes to like monetary help or assistance, I don't know. Like, I don't really believe in like asking people for just that kind of assistance. I don't want someone's relationship with me to be limited to financial assistance. And so like I try to explore my options first, and then if I really do need the help, like I'll ask my mom first. And if she doesn't have it, then there are mentors who will literally say like, if you need anything, then reach out. And so that's when I will go to that extent. But overall, if I really do need the assistance, I don't mind helping, or I don't mind reaching out.
Can I add one thing? Oh, I'm sorry. I just think it was super interesting what Nia said about just well, everything, but the salary point, because I was just listening to something recently that said by another Black woman, she said, I'm very open about my salary because when we hear the statistic that women, specifically Black women, are paid less, how will we know that unless we share that with one another? And so I'm like, when I got my job, my salary, where I'm working now, I remember having brunch with some friends who were, in the same industry. And I said, I'm making this much. How about you? And they were sharing that because I wanted to know where my salary was in comparison to theirs. Am I being underpaid, or is this the industry average? So I actually love that we had that conversation because I've never had something as open as that, open dialogue like that before. But I think it resonated with, yeah, how would we know unless we talk about it? So I hope it's not a taboo conversation moving forward. Because we want those prices going up. We want that salary going up when we go to negotiate.
I think it depends on the motive, though. There are some people who want to know just to see, like, if they want to know to see like what their options are when it comes to like money. But I think like if it's for stuff like that, like just comparing and contrasting salaries, like absolutely, I would tell you. But it definitely depends on the motive and who is asking, because there are people out here who can kind of be selfish. But yeah, it definitely depends on the motive.
Well, for me, I'm old school. We come from the school that you don't tell people how much money you make, how much money you have in the bank, how much money you have saved. I grew up in a neighborhood where if they thought you had something, somebody broke in your house, and everybody knew who was breaking in the houses on the street. You just knew who, it was you such and such brother coming through getting people's stuff. So I just came from that mentality, like, no, some things you hold to yourself. However, I am and have always been very comfortable about discussing finances in a general sense. And I will discuss my personal struggles with finances now that I've, gotten to a place where I had to learn and rebuild after messing up my own situation coming straight out of college. So, that's just my take on that.
My grandmother has always told me that I should not come off as being too independent. And a lot of it dealt with pride for me, just with asking people for help in any aspect, but specifically money. And even now, more recently, like when I had to transition from going from corporate America back to school, and my income dropping by more than $55,000. There was a lot of things that I needed help with, and one thing that she always said is, I need to stop being too independent, because the moment that happens, when I do need something, people are gonna be like, well, you didn't need it then, why you need it now? So just scenarios like that. And so from what I'm gathering, with the exception of Nia, is that we can be prideful, we can think that we're too
Yes.
independent, but I think that we really have to digress and take steps back to say that things happen, and we are
Mhm.
all are going to need something one day. And so being comfortable enough to ask, and sucking up our pride or whatever it may be, because we all need help, and
Yeah.
it takes a village. So we all just need to kind of let go of everything that's hindering us, and not asking is a hindrance for sure. So I think that that's certainly important.
And there's a level of freedom too. I just wanted to add on to what you're saying. There's a level of freedom too in being transparent.
Yes.
And I think that we spend a lot of time hiding and not being as transparent, and you spend that much more time not having the ability to rise above whatever challenge that you're facing. So
That is so true. And that is one thing that I wanted to add, like even being married. So you guys know that I shared the experience of my mom, sending me to ask her friend for some money. Well, that also kind of stuck with me because there was a point in my marriage where I realized that I held back from my husband and leaning and depending on my husband for certain things financially, i.e., at the point when I was thinking about quitting my job and either working part-time or not working at all. And I had to tell my husband that I had a fear of submitting to him financially. But I knew that conversation was hard, but it was definitely necessary because I'm married to him. You know, like, this your husband, you know, you building a life, you having unprotected sex, you having kids, you know, you doing all this stuff. So it's like, I was raised to a certain degree, like, okay, you don't depend on a man for nothing, but I'm like, I'm a married woman. What am I supposed to just throw that away? So that I had to be vulnerable and transparent with my husband when we reached a kind of a hard point where I had to say, I love you, but I don't trust you in this area because this is what I saw. And I brought that up because finances in our relationships,
Yes.
it's a different ball game. When you have a partner, and even your child, things that you brought in from your childhood, you may sound petty or scared, but it's like you have to expose that to your spouse so y'all can work through that.
Girl, you brought up something because, you know, it brought up a childhood memory of mine that has shaped me to this day. And I already know that if I ever did get married, this is going to be a big issue, or at least it's going to be a big challenge for me personally, because I'll never forget, I probably was about 5, and my mom and my dad was sharing a car. Well, they got into an argument one day, and he was just wanting to be spiteful. He grabs the car, takes the extra keys, spare keys, takes the car from out of the parking lot of her job. And so my mom laughed about it. She thought it was hilarious. And we spent, you know, a week in a rental car. I thought she was Superwoman because she was, you know, driving a stick shift. And I was like, oh my God, my mom is Superwoman. And I'm telling you, it was like a week to the day we were in another ride. And she was like, phew, and kept it moving. And that was such a pivotal moment for me at 5 years old that I still carry into my womanhood today. And that is to make sure that I keep a level of independence so that I'm never vulnerable enough to have to ever need. And while I think we do teach our generations that, and it filters all into our financial habits as well, I know that it was done from a healthy place. I know it was done intentionally, you know, to, you know, protect our women from a healthy place. But also on the flip side of that, when you're trying to be in a mutually beneficial relationship where trust and respect has to come into play, it will rear its ugly head on the flip side of that. And so all of that has everything to do with finances, because finances is just a symptom of a heart condition. We just move our money based on what's going on in our heart. So that was a great point, Sharonda. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Go ahead, Nia.
Cool. Okay, so that's definitely a whole like different topic. I'm glad you brought that up. So, Mr. Ronda, what would you say like is some advice for women who do want to get married in the future? How can they prepare for that mindset of sharing, you know, their financial history, their life, and all of that with their husband? How can they prepare for that now if they do desire to get married?
I would say, one, begin with being honest with where you are as a single woman. Being honest with where you are financially as a single woman. Sometimes, you know, because you're so independent and you're used to doing certain things on your own, you're not really used to any accountability or anybody telling you what you can and cannot do because you make your own decisions. But when you get with a spouse or partner, there's a certain level of accountability and some much needed conversations that will be had in the future. So I would say begin practicing, so to speak. But one, start by being honest with yourself. Are you working a budget? The very things that you want your spouse to be financially or just in character, are you being those things? And if not, check that, because marriage has a way of magnifying what you're really doing or not doing. So I would say begin with yourself. Even also think about the top 3 to 5 people that you speak to about finances. Pay attention to your friendships. Pay attention to the conversations you have about finances. Are certain bad habits rubbing off on you and vice versa? Like some of my family members were saying, well, you never tell your full financial situation and all that. I get it. I understand it. However, I also paid attention to how happy they were in their marriages. I'm not saying you got to put everything out there, but it has to be healthy. And then I also found that because some of these women were so independent and secretive, they also created other bills that they didn't want their husbands to know about. And so if they got into a bind, they couldn't ask their husbands because they kept secrets. So I hope that answers the questions. To just pay attention to your own financial character, because your spouse is going to bring their own set of issues. Like my husband, he said at one point in time, he didn't trust the way women manage money because of what he saw the women in his family do with money. So when it came time to join together to make some progress or make some certain decisions, he was like, I don't know. And then I also had the same reservations. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very insightful, because marriage is a whole nother topic. I don't think I'm ready for that just yet.
Yeah.
But to carry on the conversation, and this is some really good stuff, y'all. But so the articles that I was reading as it relates to women and money, and we kind of hit on this a little bit, but one of them was in regards to women being paid less. Like we all know, there's a gender pay gap, and 80 cents every dollar we make. We make 80 cents to every dollar a man makes. That's the stat. It's been that way for a while now. And so I guess this question is more specifically towards either Nia or Angel, with one of you like being still in school, or transitioning into your career. What are specific salary requirements that you have? And I'm not talking about a number. You don't have to give me a number, but what are some of your salary requirements? Like, is it just a number, or is it benefits, whether that includes insurance, time off, or I don't know, like whatever you can think of. Like, what did you ask for, if you asked for anything, and what are some of the things that you maybe negotiated for, so that we can understand why women may be paid less than men. And so I would love to hear maybe your perspective, and then maybe either Sharonda or Bernice, if you kind of want to give some perspective on what you did. So Angel, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so definitely wasn't just looking at a number, because if I'm honest, there were other places willing to pay more. And so I went where, when I had connections with people, where I felt that there was actually support within the company for me to grow in my career and learn, but also those benefits that aren't always on paper. well, I guess insurance would be on paper, but like my CPA exam being covered, like that review material is very expensive. I mean, that's I think like $3,500. So that's money I didn't have to come out of pocket. That was already covered by the firm. And being reimbursed for my CPA exams, that's another $1,000 that again isn't in my salary. So you see, but those are benefits that I get to reap, and of course, bonuses and things like that. But I will say, in the nature of public accounting, a lot of people will just say you're really not negotiating that initial salary. Like they kind of just send you that offer and you accept it. So I feel like the tips that I've accumulated now would more so apply with leveling up or going into that next job. Don't just ask for that number, but ask for ownership. Ask for, okay, is there stock in a company that I can that can be a part of my benefits package versus just that number that's on the paper. So I've definitely been taking those tips in, but I haven't been led by just a number per se, because yeah, there again, those vacation times and things like that are also very much so important when you think about the grand scheme of things. So that's just my perspective. How about you, Nia?
Yes, I actually negotiated my position. And so I started off in an accounting role at Deloitte. So I already accepted an offer. I interned with Deloitte in summer 2019. So I accepted an offer. But again, as I mentioned in our introductions, I studied accounting in undergrad, but my desire just kind of changed. And so I wanted to get more so into consulting. And you know, accepting an offer in a different area and then transitioning into a different area in that company is kind of hard. And it's honestly really done once you start at the company. And so I was able to negotiate like kind of like where in the company I would start off in the area or the practice. And that came with the salary increase. But as Angel mentioned, there's more to an offer than just a salary. You can negotiate like stock options, you can negotiate extra vacation time, working from home. Like there are different benefits that you can negotiate for. And so I would just say, like, when it comes to negotiating, look at your offer really closely. Is there anything on there that you want in addition to what you see? And try to, like, if you have other options, compare the benefits. I think that's one part we really overlook, because it's like, okay, it's a higher salary, but you have to pay for your health insurance. There's no tuition reimbursement. There's stuff like that. And so I think when it comes to the offer letter, keeping in mind how you want or what you want for a company, and then also like even looking at the culture of that company, because again, another company may be paying more, but at a different company, it's like you get promoted quickly. And it's like, it kind of just like, you definitely have to compare your offers well if you have more than one offer. But yeah, I think like just looking beyond the salary, like you mentioned, Maquiba, is what I recommend.
So I learned very early in my career that making decisions based off of money was a no-no. My first 2 years out of college, I did everything that my mom asked me not to do. I maxed out my credit cards. I was calling for grocery money, calling home, asking, and I was just doing all kinds of crazy things with my money. And so I had the opportunity to take a job that would pay me greatly to travel 100%. And I took that opportunity and I packed up everything and I moved it home in the storage, and off I went. And I was able to use that time to rebuild and learn some stuff about money. But honey, when I tell you I was miserable, that was the absolute worst 2 years. I did not have a life. I worked 80 hours, 90 hours a week. And I lost myself. And, I was so into career. And, it to the extent that I allowed it to define who I was. And when I realized that I don't like any of this, I think I went into like a mid-20s crisis. Like it was like, who am I if I'm not doing this? So I learned very quickly that the money is not should not be the primary motivator. And since then, and even now, my primary motivator, is my time and my work-life balance, and having a sense of wholeness. You know, you don't want to venture off in just one area alone where you make a lot of money, but you're unhappy. But I ain't trying to be broke again either. So there, there is a fine line and a fine line of balance for me.
I'll say this, I'm in sales. I sell mortgages for a living, okay? So I get a very small base salary just to make sure I can pay the very minimum, okay? But the bulk of my money comes from commission, meaning a deal has to close before I can get paid. And when you're on that type of pay structure, your hunger is different. You can actually control how much money you want to make. Okay. So you can choose between making like 30,000 or making it like 150, 200, depending on who's on your team. So when I looked at that, it forced me to look at what can I negotiate based on where I am in my life, because it's up to me to go out and get the business. It's up to me to network with certain people that are purchasing in certain price ranges. That way I could get a certain commission type. It also forced me to look at how hard do I really want to work? Because I'm in my late 30s. I'm 39, okay? I think that I've gotten to a point where I've paid my dues, where I'm not doing entry level or beginning work anymore like I just got out of undergrad, you know? So I have to choose how I want my income to be. And here's another key thing. It forced me to pay attention to how much debt I accumulate, because how hard I work is also going to be dependent on who I owe. So if I have a whole lot of debt, then it gives me like I have to make all this money, where somebody said, well, I can make it work on 50,000 or 75,000, where someone's like, no, I can't make it work. I got to make more. Well, when you have no debt or very little debt, you can make that choice. So that's something to take into consideration too. How much freedom do you have? How much money do you want to make based on where you are in your life? And how much debt do you have to pay back? Because that's also a key factor in negotiating our salaries.
You hit it, Sharonda, because I think we as a community of underserved communities, I think we spend an exorbitant amount of time thinking about that top number, like what we're bringing in, and we don't spend enough time thinking about what's eating away at our money. And maybe we won't have to work as hard if you didn't have so much stuff eating away at what you're bringing in. So I like that. I thank you for that point. I think that was great.
Because I can tell you this, I've worked with several women that college educated, that made high 5 figures, low 6 figures, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. I see that more often than I want to. And most of it is educational debt, car loans, and credit cards. And so I have to have those conversations as well. Was like, well, you probably wouldn't have to work as hard, or you can do this or do that if you eliminated something, because you make 6 figures, but you're kind of at a broke 6 figures. Mm-hmm. So that's you hustling backwards.
Most certainly. And what's most important to me is autonomy. Trading time for money is just, and that's one of the reasons why I got out of corporate America, because I cannot work a 9 to 5, and I love to travel. And so when I talk to family or friends or even my sisters, it's just like, I'm just like, let's go here, let's go there. And they're just like, no, we have a job. And I'm just like, okay, y'all stay where y'all at, and I'll just go on about my, fair little business. And so, yeah, it's definitely autonomy that I think is most important when looking at salary requirements per se. But we have about 5 minutes left. And so I won't ask all of you to answer this last question, but it's piggybacking off of one of Sharonda's points that she mentioned on the discussion that we had on Tuesday, where she mentioned women really economically run the country. It was one of the bullet points that I seen in one of the articles that I read just last night that states literally what is women control the nation's finances. And with that, one of the largest reasons being is because we also spend a lot. And so, just out of curiosity, and I think that this would be fairly easy and quick to answer, hopefully, what is maybe 2 or 3 things that you all currently, as women, that you could cut, like as of right now? Or if you don't have 2 or 3 things that you can cut now, what are 2 or 3 things that you have cut maybe this year to help you with your spending habits and helping you save so that you can grow and build your financial future the way that you would like for it to be built?
I would say for me, what has helped my household is when I embraced cooking more instead of ordering out. And I think everybody kind of learned when the pandemic began and all the restaurants and stuff started was shutting down. And oh my gosh, and everybody was like, I got so much more extra money. And a lot of people realized, like, oh, I eat out a lot, or I do DoorDash or Uber Eats a lot. So cooking was one of them. Also, reducing our debt, meaning credit card and loan debt, that helped tremendously. Oh my gosh, that helped tremendously. And then also fitting in, it's kind of going with spending, but fitting in like the areas of your life that makes you happy, because that changes how you spend money. Part of the reason why we ate out a lot is because we were kind of lazy and overworked. So when you kind of overworked, you tend to overspend. When you and your spouse are not in agreement, you tend to overspend. So yeah, being in agreement with your spouse, realizing that you got food at home, and cutting out your debt. That's for me.
Perfect. Thank you. Anybody else want to give it a shot?
I would say one agree on that debt thing. The moment that I paid off all my student loans, well, maybe like 2, 3 years ago, I started seeing my funds increase. I was like, oh, I actually had that potential in me to save all this kind of money versus spending. So yeah, getting rid of those loans, so free. I think I also talked about earlier, just nails. Like, once we were in the pandemic, all those nail shops were closed down. I was like, oh, I don't need to get my nails done every 2 weeks. Like I could actually save that money as well. Although I feel like self-care is important. So anything that is good to just yourself do those and budget that into, or just have that in your budget. But this is something that maybe I don't struggle a lot with, but just those subscriptions that people have, the Netflix, the Hulu, the Disney Plus, all those are literally eating away at your funds on a monthly basis. So for me, I actually have zero subscriptions. Like, give me the free. I will watch the ads. I will, whatever. But I'm also called the cheap one in the family. So I don't mind that because I actually get to save that money versus it just automatically getting taken out every month. So that's me.
Angel, thank you so much for just sharing your journey of getting out of student loan debt. Speaking of women, I speak to so many different women that just kind of gave up. They gave up and they automatically think that, oh, this is a forever debt and I'm never going to pay off my student loans. So I don't know how much you had, but just knowing that you are a Black woman that had student loan debt and actually went through the process of paying it off, that speaks volumes. So thank you for putting it out there that it can be done.
Glory to God on that one, seriously. But thank you. And yeah, we just want that to be the conversation, that it doesn't have to be a forever thing, that it doesn't have to be the norm. Again, I shared Tuesday that, from honestly, as soon as I stepped foot on campus, mom was like, "I hope you pay off those student loan debts after college," because that was her thought process. But I'm like, we should have conversations of how can we actually avoid the debt? How can you work to pay off that debt in advance or not even get it at all? So again, we're going really in depth with that in the book, but there are so many other options versus seeing that debt or having that interest accumulate and you not even know. So I was like, let me get this out the way ASAP, because that interest was steadily doubling up. I think I might have taken out, it had to be at least an extra $1,000 on what I thought I'd taken out by the time I actually paid it off, just because of interest. And that was before graduating. So I couldn't imagine what it would have been if I had waited until after I graduated and started, my full-time job. So, got it done.
And you've brought up a great point in why financial literacy is so important, because you had the knowledge to know that your interest was accruing faster than the rate that you were paying off. And so you're a lot of people will pay on loans for a year and a half and you only paid off $2. And all of that money went to interest because your interest was too high and it was accruing at a higher rate than the rate that your money is paying off the principal. And so it is my hope that we will continue conversations like this to educate from a literacy standpoint so that people can understand when you send your check in to pay off that loan balance, you need to understand how they're calculating how much of that money is going to pay that balance off versus how much that money they're going to line their pockets with. So again, I got to echo Sharonda, kudos to you for understanding that upfront while you were in school and getting ahead of it. And it is my hope that we'll continue to have forums like this. This is just the beginning, where we'll continue to educate and really hone in so people can understand what is happening to their finances as soon as the money leaves their hands.
Perfect. And that is we'll stop there with questions, but this is the card game. This is the purpose of it, just to have a discussion. There are different walks of life that we as women or whoever we are, that we all have. Some of them may be good, some of them may be bad, but being able to discuss our journeys and the experiences that we have had and share with one another some of the things that we should do and maybe we shouldn't do, or just different perspectives that we should think about, is going to be important in helping us move the needle forward, as Bernice stated earlier, on reducing generational or the gap in building wealth and making sure that we are building a financially secure future, if not for us, then for the generations that are to come. And so, with that being said, I'm going to thank you all for joining the panel, answering the question, and it's being as detailed and as open and transparent as you all were. Thank you all so much for that. And now I will pass it off to Bernice to close us out.
All right. So, folks, we had a very great conversation. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for serving alongside me with the panel discussion. And, happy Women's History Month. Let's continue to break barriers. And for those that are watching us, I see we have several people that are on that's watching us online. And for those that will watch the replay, we'll be back here for another discussion at the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Time on April 15th. And we'll choose a few more topics to keep the conversation going. And if there's anyone that's out there that has certain things that they like to see us discuss, feel free to email me. We'd be more than happy to consider that as well. The email address would be finedu@nabasouthern.com. And you can always follow us on our YouTube channel, and that is NABA SR Financial Education. And with that, I think we're done. It's a wrap.